Shalom. I want to give all praise and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Ruchach, Wadash. Double honors to my elders and teachers, and peace and blessings unto the elect in the house of David. I was sitting here meditating on the woman. I was meditating on how it is better to have them in complete control. And the times that we're coming in is going to be a time of great trouble, of perplexity for the multitudes of people, of failure of systems and economy, and financial, states, and ultimately, horror, crisis, and violence and famine. And ultimately, who shall not fear? Who shall not be humbled in those days? And when you think about the woman, that's going to be a time of great humbling for them. And as far as you men, you think about Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1, they'll come, several women shall grab hold onto one man. The thing is, you will have these women, in control, in complete control, and to the simple-minded man, to the simple, they will, disagree with that statement, to have complete control on a woman. That's a simple man. That's how it's supposed to be. A man is supposed to be controlling, over his household, having complete authority. In his time, now, before that trouble, you're not going to have complete control over them. And that's why they act how they act. There's no fear of the Lord in their heart. But what the Lord is going to do is going to bring the fear of the Lord in their heart. To those who will be saved, to the woman who is predestined to be saved ultimately. Because you got the believing woman, but you also want to have the woman who will come to believe by way of these, events that's going to come upon the earth. But now, they're breaking in, they have liberty to do what they want. But the time shall come where you're going to have them in complete control. Now, in the book of Psalms, it speaks about all men shall fear and flee away from him, talking about the wicked doings of the elites, of the Edomites, particularly those in position of power and authority. All men shall fear and flee away. And we're coming into a time where people are recognizing the evils and the wickedness of this, power system, of this rulership, and the evil schemes that they are practicing, their wicked agenda. And also tell you in the same chapter that I'm speaking about, I think is in Psalm chapter 60 something. Forgive me, I'm not going to be able to, bring it out. But basically it tell you that they shall declare, all men shall declare the works of God. In fact, let's see if I can find it. Psalm chapter 64, verse 9, it says, and all men shall fear and shall declare the work of God. So, what Esau's about to do, what he's about to practice on a societal and economic level, on a worldwide level, as far as the evils and the violence and the trouble that he's going to bring upon it, that he's orchestrating behind closed doors, secretly, privily, his NWO, his agenda. People are going to fear that. People are going to recognize that. And dread was coming. Dread was happening. This is, and shall declare the work of God. And this is on a general level, not just those in the truth and the faith. People generally are going to understand to some degree that we are in a time that is so extreme and drastic. They're going to understand that it's biblical, or spiritual or of God, to some degree. You know, it says, for they shall wisely consider of his doings. You're going to even have some people recognize, the scripture that's being fulfilled, the prophecies that's being fulfilled. You have people now, even Edomites, Christians, and, people of these different religions recognizing that, oh, Esau's building, his beast system. Esau's, about to bring forth the mark, who, recognizing to some degree that, it's prophetic, even though they may not understand scriptures, perfectly, but, all men shall declare the work of God to some degree. It says, for they shall wisely consider of his doings. So some people are going to see the truth, the reality of things, and that pride, focusing on the woman, is going to be taken away. That their rulers are devils and demons, not for them, not for the profit, not for the good, but for their own good. That they're practicing great evil that's going to affect them. People are going to see this, In the book of Sirach, chapter 36, it tell you that, the prayers of the saints, in Sirach chapter 36 is a prayer, sent out to God by the saints. And this is verse 5. And let them know thee as we have known thee. Yeah, so the world is going to know God, and his side of severity, his severe side, as we have known it. Right now we learn God via, this truth, via the Spirit. We ain't learn God, as we go, as the world's going to learn God by these great evils, but we learn God in a mild way. We endure chastisement, discipline. Being familiar with these scriptures, with these mysteries of Yahweh Shai. This is how we're learning God, but the time shall come when the world's going to learn God by horrible crisis coming upon the world, by plagues, by the punishment sent by God. And that's how they're going to learn God, and they're going to, by fear, even though we fear the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom, the beginning of knowledge, but they're going to come to fear the Lord by way of these horrible events coming upon the world. And that's including the woman, and the only way to know God is by knowing the truth. Now you could learn the truth by the word of mouth, hearing the word, hearing the scriptures, or you can learn the truth by, experiencing the truth, in a harsh way, experiencing the terrible acts of God, in an unfavorable way, experiencing, what he do, the horrible, doings of his, by experience, So let them know thee as we have known thee, that there is no God but only thou, O God. And yeah, you think about in the book of Micah, the woman is known as the enemy, who's full of unbelief, that saved to us, where is the Lord thy God? So they're they don't believe, they're full of incredulity, but the Lord is gonna, slap them with reality, Let's get verse 2. It says, and send thy fear upon all the nations that seek not after thee. And that's what the Lord's about to do. What the Lord's about to do is going to bring fear upon peoples, multitudes of peoples, man. You know? And people are going to instinctively, you know, inwardly associate these evils with God, with the scriptures, to some degree. You know? So, Isaiah chapter 4:1, you know, focusing on that, you know, the Lord's going to give you the woman in complete control. You know, talking about you men of the Lord, you prophets, you teachers, you fellow believers, you witnesses, you believing men, you know, who have greatness in your heart. That is Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. You know, it's truth. I'm going to close off in that. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying. I want to give all praise and honor and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Shalom.